If simply deciding on what Netflix show to watch can be very difficult due to the insane amount of options, I can understand why, if you're a little bit curious about classical music or opera, finding where to start can feel impossible. I mean, this is a whole list of works composed by just one person. And there is such a broad range of very different music. Even for me, as an orchestra conductor that loves and works in classical music, there are pieces I flat out don't like and others that I will have on repeat, mostly inside my head after a concert without letting me sleep, but that's a different issue. So if this is you, if you've been meaning to get into classical music, I'm breaking everything down into very practical steps, from what to listen, where I've created specific playlists to help you choose a starting point, to how to start listening, what to do if you're listening at home, and even what tickets to buy if you're gonna go to a concert. Let's start with the what. You want to give classical music a go, but don't know where to start. The problem with the term classical music is that it lumps together music from the 1500s that sounds like this.
And what should that rare mirror be? Some goddess or some queen is she?
With music written 400 years later that sounds like this. So within classical music, there are very specific periods that have a very distinct sound to them, different use of harmony, of melody. The orchestra gets bigger as time goes by. You need to identify which period is more to your liking so you can start there. So what I've done is I've created 5 playlists that correspond to a specific period within classical music so that you can compare music from these different playlists and choose the one that resonates the most with you. This is obviously a very, very narrow selection. I'm leaving a lot of stuff out within each period. I'm leaving periods that came before and after out. And I actually had to re-record this very section a couple of times because I initially was going to say a few words about each period to help describe it to you. But I then realized that it was neither helpful nor comprehensive. But for now, I will say this. If you like a very clear structure to your music, if you like the formula of melody and accompaniment that you can clearly hear, start at the playlist number 2. Start with the classic period. And if you don't find that very compelling, maybe move on to the next playlist and see how you feel. The analogy I can sort of make about this is if you think about the history of painting, if you take as starting point a similar period in time called in painting neoclassicism, you will find a very clear sense of structure, form, perspective, proportion, human figure. And as you move through time, this is going to get experimented with, boundaries are going to be pushed, more personal perspective from the painters is going to be involved until we eventually reach abstract painting. So when you're moving through the playlist and moving through time, this is sort of what's going to happen to a lot of things, to the structure of pieces, to tonality itself. We're going to get to atonality at some point. And even as I am trying to exemplify this, I realize that there are so many caveats to this, but I think this kind of helps paint a picture. No pun intended. Now it's time to think about what type of ensemble you'd like to listen to. You kind of have to experiment for yourself, but if you have no clue, then just think roughly small or big. If you prefer, one instrument, 2 instruments, then go for piano solo pieces, violin, cello, duets, string quartets. And if you like sort of bigger masses of people producing sound, go for orchestras, choirs, and if you like voice, of course, you have opera, and you also have song cycles, which are kind of like albums because it's a collection of songs that have a thematic through line. But here I will say, do experiment and be patient. Say if you started listening to piano music and it's not really doing it for you, switch to something very contrasting like orchestral music because it is really a very different sound. Now, if you are thinking mostly about opera, there is one other thing that I want to advise, which is that the plot, the type of story really, really matters. I always say that it's like going to the movies. You might have someone that really enjoys going to a movie theater and watching a drama that would hate going to the same movie theater and watching a horror film. It's me, that someone is me. And the same applies to opera because it's a stage work. Now, I'm not going to get into details here because I already made a really comprehensive video with lists of opera based on the type of plot, the language, the duration. It looks really old, but the information still stands. Okay, so you kind of know what you want to start listening to. Now let's talk about the how. So here I am legally obligated to tell you that the live experience does not compare to listening at home because classical music and opera are not amplified. So the way that the sound waves hit your ears and your body is completely different. If you're going to a symphony orchestra, seeing 100 people produce sound is an energy that can't be matched and won't be interrupted by your phone sending you a notification about the latest Black Friday sale. Now, having said that, let's be real. If you know that making the commitment to go physically to a concert and buying a ticket in advance is something that you're not there yet, then just start listening at home. And you can do this passively or actively, and there are sort of benefits to both. You can put classical music in the background while you do chores or work on your computer, and this is the best way to get into classical music because it gives your brain and your ears time to get used to it. And this time is important. One of my favorite composers now of all time, that if I ever conduct a symphony of his, I'll just faint and die, is Gustav Mahler. But when I was starting with classical music, I couldn't listen to more than 5 minutes of it because it's almost like my brain couldn't decode it, and now it just speaks directly to my heart. So having your brain process classical music in the background is really useful, and I have a tip for you which includes this thing over here. I recently bought an actual CD player to become one step closer to my dream of flushing my phone down the toilet, and to my surprise it came with a radio. And so I started doing something I had not done in years, which is I started listening to my local classical music radio. And I 100% recommend this if you are starting because you don't have to choose anything. You just put it in the background, and since radios will mix it up and play different periods and styles within classical music throughout the day, whenever you catch your ear paying more attention to something, write it down because that's a clue that that composer or period is more interesting to you. Now, if you want to start listening at home but want to do it in a more active way where you carve out time to listen to something, my suggestion is to watch a video so you have something to hold on to visually when perhaps your ears get a bit tired or distracted. And most video recordings have excellent camera work that follows every instrument when it's their turn. Some of them nowadays look really, really cinematic, and for opera you can sort of see the expressions of singers from up close. Let's say you are now ready to go physically to a concert, or maybe you were always ready, and you don't really know where to start looking. Let's start with a concert. Let's say you want to go listen to a symphony played by an orchestra and you are in, let's pick a completely random place, Kansas. Okay, logically you search Kansas Symphony Concert and you'll find your local symphony orchestra. But another thing to search is university or music conservatory orchestras. We're still in Kansas and having a quick look. There are 2 universities that have orchestras, and one of them has actually many orchestras. And these type of concerts tend to be free, if not very affordable. Another place to search are churches, where they will often put up concerts for like chamber ensembles or duets, string quartet, or for choirs. And they are also usually free, if not very affordable. And if you are into smaller chamber music, solos, duets, string quartets, there is a ton of this in music conservatories because students need to play very often, either to gain experience or for their finals exams, and these also tend to be free, if not very affordable. But let's say you decided to go to the Kansas Symphony Orchestra. Before you buy your ticket, check concessions. Almost every orchestra or opera house will have discounts for seniors, students, sometimes discounts just for people under 30 or over 65. For a concert, I would say anywhere you sit will be fine because the auditoriums are built for you to be able to hear well from everywhere. But if you're gonna go see opera, I do want to talk a little bit more specifically about the seating. So here is footage I made of an opera house that I visited twice while I was in town. I got 2 different types of seat each time, but both tickets costed the same amount of money. From this first seat, you can clearly see the full stage, and once the curtain opens, you will be able to see the subtitles above, which are usually both in the language of the home country and also in English. So sitting here, you don't miss any action, you can see the full stage and you can follow the subtitles, but you are pretty far away. This second seat I chose was much closer, so you do get to see things in a lot more detail, but the view of the stage is partially restricted and the surtitles above are also partially obstructed. Now, restrictions in view are always advertised beforehand when you're buying a ticket, so my suggestion if you're new to opera is to choose the seat that may be further away, but where you can see everything that happens on stage, every single singer, and where you can follow the plot via the subtitles. But this is obviously a personal choice. If, for example, you know that being very far away kind of takes you out, then maybe do choose a closer seat, but this is my sort of blanket recommendation. Okay, I hope this was helpful. I really want to hear from you in the comments if this helped. If it didn't, I also want to hear from you. Just please keep it respectful, because why wouldn't you? And I will see you next video.